Saga of Tanya the Evil, Episode 1. It's 1924, and every other city is jealous of the Empire's stronghold. For this reason, they continually wage war against them from all sides. The soldiers try their best, but they know they're only buying time for the mages to come to their rescue. Second Lieutenant Tanya Degurachov is the commander of Platoon 3, and she is quite the exceptional mage, saving countless lives as they travel from war to war on different corners of the Empire. She doesn't take weakness lightly or disobeying orders, as she proves by retiring Harold and Cursed to the pillbox as punishment. Lieutenant Eileen Schwarzkopf sends Tanya and her platoon to the north to wage war against the Republican army. Apparently, their outside observers have been receiving heavy fire from them. Tanya prepares her team but doesn't need them at the end of the day. She single-handedly shoots down the first two platoons before flying 10,000 feet into the sky. The long-range attack from that distance implodes the last Republican platoon alongside their commander, Augustine Hausmann. The Republic catches wind of her, and people nickname her the Devil of the Rhine. It turns out that this monster knowingly sent Harold and Cursed to their deaths. Episode 2. Tanya used to be a man in the modern world, with zero faith in the supernatural. One day, he fires a desperate employee who later returns to push him into an oncoming train. God pauses time to give him a chance at reincarnation, but he's stubborn and faithless because of the luxuries of science in 2013. This pushes God to send him back to 1924, a time of war and a world devoid of science. She was reborn in a wretched orphanage, and the army was her only way out. After showing an aptitude for magic, she voluntarily joined and trained with them until she was promoted. On her first mission, she was appointed an aerial observer and did absolutely well up until the Entente Alliance came for her directly. She begs to leave the battlefield but gets turned down. Tanya then resolves to fight to the death. She takes them out one after the other, and when they become too much, she activates her self-destructive sequence, surviving by the skin of her teeth. She awakes to meet accolades and gets awarded a Wing Assault badge at just 9 years old. But her plan is to get away from the warfront. Mere days after she heals up, the chief commander allots her a position in the instruction unit, far away from the front lines, like she wanted. She's made to test some new gear, and they fail marvelously. She and Dr. Schugel get into it, and she applies for a transfer. The commander deems the prototype unsafe, and Tanya sleeps with happiness about her win. In her dream, God appears again to scold her faithlessness. She's as rude as ever to him, and he decides to bless her with a miracle to revive her faith. She's called back to try the Jewel prototype, and as she flies higher into the sky, the device loses control. Tanya's life flashes before her eyes, and God tells her that she'll have to pray every time she wants to use the Jewel. As pissed off as she is, she prays. Soon enough, the Jewel stabilizes, and Tanya is sent flying thousands of feet above expectation. Checkmate. Lieutenant Colonel Rerugan thinks Tanya is a danger waiting to happen, but gets turned down by his superiors. Because of her exploits, Tanya gets fast-tracked from second to first lieutenant, and has to attend the military academy. Episode 4. Tanya begins at the military university alongside other captains and lieutenants. She's been thriving there for 6 months now. While she's in the library to pick up a book, General Zetor, Vice Director of Strategy, pulls her aside for a meeting. He asks where she sees the war going, but Tanya is scared to reply until he gives her free speech. She tells him about the inevitability of a world war and how a battalion of mages could reduce the loss of lives down the line. The general is very interested in her concept and asks her to write him a formal proposal, which he passes down to the other members of the strategy team, including Rerugan. Tanya gets invited to the strategy headquarters after all the members except Rerugan have agreed on forming the Mage Battalion. She's oblivious until the last minute that she's going to be the one leading the rapid response after she graduates. Tanya then complains about her rank, but Zetor already has an answer waiting. She is to be promoted to captain and then to organizer. She's to choose 48 men for her battalion, but gets hundreds of applications. Her plan to delay the selection process seems more feasible now. Unfortunately, help comes in the form of Second Lieutenant Victoria. Episode 5. Tanya creates an optical illusion as a test for the mages, but out of 48 participants, only 12 pass. This causes a ruckus at the strategy headquarters. Tanya promises to speed up the selection process if they let her re-educate the participants who showed promise and get them up to speed in just a month. Others don't believe it, but Zetor gives her permission to even be rough with them. She sets up an operation where fake and real shells fall from the sky for 36 hours straight, and only the survivors from that move to Phase 2, a map with 48 hours to reach the location. Despite being hit with an avalanche, the mages press on until they finish Tanya's training in the allotted month. She gets promoted to major and is asked to move out with her team to the southeastern region of Dacia immediately. After due recon, they discover that the Dacian army has no air support whatsoever, so they become ripe for the picking by Tanya and her battalion. They take out thousands of them and raid their base of valuables, but that's not enough for Tanya. They head deeper into the capital and destroy 8 Dacian factories at a time. A splendid birthday gift to herself, I must say. Episode 6. The supply line of the Empire is having issues, and their biggest base is in the north. Entente Alliance soldiers have invaded them, and they see Tanya's battalion as the last remaining hope, so they send them to Norden. The Empire's air soldiers are getting wiped out by bomber jets until Tanya and her team arrive at the scene. Their opponents are harder to beat than they expected, and still, Tanya turns down and back up. She says her team should feel what real war is like, and promises to bankrupt whichever team contributes the least to their victory. As a new batch of jet bombers approaches alongside 2 mage teams, Tanya single-handedly takes down a larger percentage of the bombers, leaving the escapees to flee. She descends to collect information from one of the fallen jets when God appears to her again, asking her how it feels to be chased by the whole world. Already pissed off, Tanya destroys the Entente observation hideout and heads back to base for new orders. She's told to stay in the north to help fight against the meddling world powers, and she enthusiastically agrees. Episode 7. Lieutenant General Heinrich of the Northern Theater strongly opposes Tanya's plan to draw out the war until after winter, and they have an ugly back and forth in front of everyone. Tanya is most worried about their supplies running out, but the general just wants the war to end quickly, despite its detriments. She walks out on him and is later called into Rutherford's chambers, where she realizes their secret plan to distract the Entente Alliance and attack them by landing on the Ors Fjord via the sea. Tanya is put in charge of the initial attack on the Entente forces, and they drop in on them in the dead of the night. Colonel Anson, in charge of the Ors Fjord, is taken by surprise when Tanya and her team of air mages begin to destroy all their cannon emplacements. Entente air mages clashed with Tanya's team for the second time and put up quite the fight, fueled solely by vengeance. It's pointless because Imperial reinforcements arrive on the shores of the Ors Fjord and bomb everything in sight. While the Entente Alliance wallows in defeat, the Empire celebrates its victory and the coming end of the war. Episode 8. The people of Arren have joined forces with the Republicans to resist the Empire, therefore straining their supply line and taking out Empire soldiers. So the Empire calls on Tanya and her battalion to once again handle the situation. They even hand out an evacuation notice to the people of Arren. The only problem remains the presence of civilian rebels. Tanya's orders are to issue warnings, and if they're not adhered to, she's to wipe them all out. This is a tough pill for some of Tanya's teammates to swallow. It's just as they expected when they meet resistance from the Republicans and the Arren militia. Tanya's first lieutenant gets injured in the process. She then makes the public announcement for the release of Imperial soldiers. They do not need the warning, so the whole town of Arren gets blown to pieces. That simple. Some of the enemy mages retreat to guide Republicans out of the city after the explosive attacks. Headquarters reports the hindrance to Tanya and asks her to get rid of the mages, but Second Lieutenant Grants cannot handle it. He even challenges Tanya's authority. She wastes no time putting him in his place. It turns out that the order to give evacuation notices and announce a chance for surrender all came from a paper Tanya had written much earlier in the military. Episode 9. Tanya runs into Yuger on her way to strategic headquarters. He tells her that the higher-ups plan to use her battalion as the point guard in their next operation. Afterwards, she meets with Rarigan to question his plan. He admits its inefficiency and presents Tanya with a new one. It involves taking out the enemy headquarters directly. She complains that it'll be predictable, but then comes Dr. Shugel with another crazy invention. He invented a V1 jet with an engine powered by hydrogen fuel, capable of breaking the sound barrier at a speed of Mach 1.5. Tanya and her team are to drive these jets and assault enemy headquarters with them. The Republicans take the bait and begin to advance into Imperial territory while the Empire puts the final touches on their last resort to end the war. They call it Operation Shock and Awe. Episode 10. The drop is successful as Tanya and her team use the jet as projectiles to attack enemy bases. They land stealthily and split into groups to achieve the mission. Back at HQ, the stakeholders are angry and demand explanations as to the Empire's retreat. Zetor just keeps quiet as he awaits word from Tanya. The team successfully destroys all Republican communication headquarters and makes a run for their ally submarine immediately. Word gets to Zetor about the victory, and he uses the information to shut the stakeholders up. Phase 2 is Operation Lockpick. They get the Republican right flank to advance into rigged Imperial territory and then blow them to ashes. All Republican efforts to reach their command center prove abortive. They're under heavy attack from the front and seek to retreat, but it's impossible because the Empire encircles them like fish in a barrel. The Republicans take fire from all sides. Word gets to Tanya in the submarine, and she mobilizes her team to join the war again. Unfortunately, as they fly to join them, they're attacked by enemy mages supported by the Allied kingdoms. Lieutenant Grants is the first to get shot out of the sky, and the perpetrator is out for vengeance. Episode 11. The battalion's pursuers outnumber them greatly, and they begin to crowd them with attacks. 2 more soldiers from Tanya's battalion fall, but there's just one man chasing after Tanya with all his might. This man also has God's blessing, so as she rises to great altitudes, he follows and crowds her with a trench gun. He doesn't care that it's illegal under treaty laws. Tanya begins to get overwhelmed as it becomes one-on-one. She has to pull out her knife to stab him, but he doesn't die. The yellow glint in his eyes assures her of God's blessing. He grabs her by the hand and begins to charge up to implode. Victoria intervenes and shoots him through the chest, taking Tanya's left hand as collateral. She immediately empties her bullets into this man, and he still doesn't die. He finally implodes with Tanya well within range, and the rest of the team falls sad over losing their commander. Tanya later comes out after the smoke settles. The Imperial Army finally gets rid of all the hostile Republicans and secures their victory. Everywhere you look, someone's celebrating. Even the men go on vacation, but Tanya stays behind with nothing to do. She notices a place called Brest Fort may be the enemy's point of regrouping and wishes to attack it so the war can really end. The higher-ups fight against it because they had already called an armistice. She doesn't take it well and breaks down in anger in her office. Episode 12. Tanya tries to meet with General Zetor to air her grievances, and she's told he's out celebrating. She asks for Rutherford, and it's the same thing. Rarigan stops her on her way out, asking her for a word. It turns out the Western Theater filed a complaint about Tanya almost disobeying orders, and Rarigan inquired about it. Tanya asks permission to speak freely and then unleashes her logic on Rarigan. She thinks everyone is celebrating prematurely, and the flames of hate have not yet been extinguished. Right then, a messenger comes to tell Rarigan that the remnants of the Republican Army have promised to never stop fighting the Empire. They name themselves the Free Republic and get survivors from the Entente Alliance to join them. The higher-ups gather, and it becomes obvious that Tanya has been right all along. They sort out a plan to take down the Republicans, putting Tanya and her battalion at the forefront of battle. She's seen addressing her team as she blasphemes against God, saying she and her soldiers will take his place and bring judgment to whoever stands in the way of the Empire. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more amazing anime content, and don't forget to like and hit that subscribe button.